Hey ladies and gents, welcome back. This is going to be part 4 to What If Naruto Could Use Antimatter. So, with that being said, make sure to check out my Discord. I'll leave a link to that below in the description where you can just give me different what if ideas and, talk to me, different things like that. Also, make sure to like and subscribe. There's not actually going to be a like all in this video, but it's just the nice thing to do. I don't know why I always say that, that's kind of just my new intro now. Anyway, let's do a brief recap of what happened in the last part before getting into the new material of the what if itself. In the last part, Naruto and the rest of Team 7, being Naruto, Ino, Hinata, and Kakashi, actually started guiding the bridge builder named Tazna back to the, Land of Waves to actually build a bridge. They had an encounter with some Chunin brothers, which Naruto pretty easily defeated, and then they had an encounter with Zabuza, which Naruto actually was the one mainly to partake in, and he actually did defeat Zabuza, but before they could actually, truly capture him, Haku would actually show up and he'd be like, I'm taking him by, as Naruto basically let down his guard and was turning around to greet his friends who were walking, towards him. So with that being said, let's get into the new material of the what if itself. So with everybody heading over to the bridge after Kakashi, regained his stamina from using his Sharingan even for just the smallest amount of time, they actually would arrive at the bridge and they would start building it until eventually, obviously, Haku and Zabuza would eventually arrive. They would start, squaring off against all of the different people, with Hinata and Ino actually staying back to let Naruto and basically Kakashi actually end up doing the fighting. With Zabuza realizing that Naruto might actually be stronger than Kakashi is, he'd honestly want to take on Naruto himself, and he'd tell Haku to take on Kakashi, with Kakashi being like, it's kind of hurting my feelings, Naruto's stronger than me, probably. So Naruto would start going against Zabuza one more time. This time with the new trick up his sleeve that he knows he can actually use already. Grabbing some random object that would, fit in his hands, be a pretty decent weapon. He picks it up, coats it in his chakra before allowing the antimatter to go into it, basically making a more powerful version of whatever he picked up. He would start facing off against Zabuza now, and as Naruto does this, he realizes that he should probably get some sort of weapon, some sort of sword, and it might work a lot better than picking up a stick or some random steel beam sitting on the ground somewhere. So Naruto would realize this, and he'd put this into his mind for later on, and he would continue on with his fight with Zabuza, actually dealing a lot of really good blows, with Zabuza barely being able to actually hit Naruto. And Naruto would be very easily winning. He's absolutely decimating Zabuza at this point. Zabuza still didn't know what Naruto did to him. He didn't know that Naruto could actually use, antimatter. He didn't know that Naruto could do any of this. He just figured he could probably take him on now that he, for some reason, got his confidence back, even though he shouldn't have it back. Naruto would basically, three-shot him to the ground with a few swings from whatever his weapon of choice was, this specific situation, and he would knock Zabuza to the ground, basically defeating him with relatively no difficulty at all. Haku would end up being finished off by Kakashi not too much later on, and everything would go a lot easier than it would in the original. So, things go a lot easier than they would do in the original, with everybody getting, basically returning to the village after, getting it named the Great Naruto Bridge, just like it did in the original. So with them returning to the village, some time would actually pass by until eventually, obviously, Kakashi would be like, hey, you guys wanna do, the Chunin exams? Because, why not? They'd actually be pretty excited by this, because, this was a pretty exciting prospect. They didn't think that they were actually ready for this yet, but hey, whatever, they might as well try for it. So they end up partaking in the Chunin exams, starting with the written part. With them starting with the written part of the exams, it would go pretty easily for most people, except for Naruto. Again, Naruto's physical body, pretty up there, it's pretty high, but his mind, he's not that great. So people would still be trying to help him, like Hinata would still try to help him, and Naruto would eventually kind of pass, more like he doesn't really answer any questions, but it works, because the other two do, basically. So, through a lot of hardship, they do actually end up passing the written exams, and they start the Forest of Death, which doesn't really go normally at all. It would be really easy for them. They find some random team that happens to have the right scroll, because Orochimaru wouldn't actually be going for Naruto's squad this time. He'd be going for Sasuke, whichever. So, whichever team Sasuke was placed on, either on team, Chikacho, or what the frick was Kurenai, I think Kurenai was the one with Hinata. I don't remember. He'd be placed on some random team with them, and they would obviously be defeated by Orochimaru, and Sasuke would still get his curse mark. So Naruto would be arriving, or Naruto and the rest of his squad, I don't know what that is, would be arriving a lot sooner than what they would in the original. Actually, faster than even what Gaara's team did. And because the first team that they had actually came across happened to have the right scroll that they needed, so they arrived there even faster than Gaara, actually setting a record. Everybody's pretty impressed by this. They're like, like, we get that Naruto is strong, but like they didn't think he would set like a record, like above Itachi, above Minato. They didn't think anything like that. They'd obviously be pretty impressed by this, but then they go back and look at his written exam scores, and they're like, eh. I mean, he's a pretty good leader, but like he's not that smart. So anyway, some more time would pass. Everybody would eventually get to the end of or not everybody, obviously, but most of the people would end up getting to the end of the preliminary, what the fuck am I trying to say? They'd get to the end of the Forest of Death, and, you know, the first part of the actual, like, tournament of the Chunin exams would start, with Naruto starting off by fighting Kiba. Kiba's gonna get butt-fucked. Naruto one-shots him to the ground, doesn't even have to use antimatter, just fucking punches him. He's not a threat. So, Naruto would actually be pretty invested in the fight with Hinata and Neji, obviously, because again, Naruto has been on a team with Hinata. He'd be even more angry. He'd be shouting curses and, you know, different things like that at Neji, and he would actually be one of the people to jump down there and actually restrain Neji. Surprisingly to Neji, Naruto's able to do it alone before any of the other Jonin or anybody like that even gets down there. Naruto's there, with his hand basically held up in front of Neji's fist as he blocks his punch, basically keeping him from hurting Hinata too much or actually killing her. So with him stopping this, he gives Neji this glare that basically says, I'm gonna kill you when we fight. And Neji's like, yeah, you can sure fucking try. So Sasuke would still end up having his curse mark, so he'd still end up fighting that same person, and he'd still end up winning, because that wouldn't really change. There's no reason for it to change. He couldn't use chakra in the original, and he can't use it now. So, with that happening, obviously, Ino versus Sakura. Why is that even a fight? They didn't have, they couldn't have off-screened each other to a draw. They had to make, like, an entire episode of Ino and fucking Sakura fighting. Like, they didn't have to do that. That was, like, a waste of everybody's time. But, so that fight, that would still happen. So basically, the 2 months before the actual finals of the exam would actually begin, with Naruto going and getting a sword, like I basically have been leading up to. Naruto would finally go and get that weapon that I said he was going to get at the beginning. So he finally ends up getting it, and he starts training with it to basically be able to easily put his antimatter inside of it. Obviously, over the 2 months, he would be able to do that really easily. Basically, instantaneously, his chakra would, like, go around it and the antimatter would go in. He doesn't have to charge anything up. He doesn't have to do anything. It just kind of does it. So Naruto's able to do that, along with his physical body being slightly stronger than what it was just before. Like, not from what it was, like, when he would do the normal exams, but, like, that's way above that. But, like, what it was before, like, in this, Naruto basically got stronger. That's what I'm trying to fucking say. His physical body is stronger than it was than when he was doing the Forest of Death. So he enters the next part of the exams, and he would start fighting off against Neji. He would obviously absolutely butt-fuck Neji, but I should actually probably say the fight, because it's going to be kind of interesting, at least a little bit. So, Naruto obviously isn't going to use some sort of kunai to, completely repel the forces of anything like that, or of, rotation or anything like that. That's not going to happen. Naruto, he infuses his sword with this antimatter, and obviously he's pissed. He's absolutely livid with Neji. He wants to fucking kill him. He said he was going to do it, and he kind of wants to live up to that. Hinata basically told Naruto, like, not to kill Neji before the fight actually happened, but Naruto still, he wants to deal a pretty good frickin' pummel to frickin', he's pissed. He is absolutely, like, he does not want to let him even live, but he's gonna basically listen to Hinata and be like, fine, I won't kill him, I'll just, like, nearly kill him. So their fight would actually start when Naruto would infuse his sword, and he'd run towards Neji at full speed, giving him a basically backhand with the sword, not using the sharp edge because he doesn't want to actually kill him. Neji would get sent flying back into a wall, making a massive crater in it before falling down. He's trying to basically stand up at this point. He's literally on his knees, and he's bleeding a little bit out of his head, and he's wondering how Naruto's even able to do that. He couldn't even see Naruto move. He shouldn't be that fast, especially since Neji has the Byakugan. He shouldn't be able to do something like that. He would end up using rotation, and he'd think it would be enough to actually deflect Naruto's sword. It would obviously not be. Naruto's sword would go straight through, and Neji would get a few cuts on his arms because, Naruto can literally see because rotation is just Neji trying to move his arms really quick. I think it is at the very least, or basically like spinning, I guess you could say. And Naruto would be able to see this clearly, so he tries to basically not cut Neji too much and leave these small little cuts along Neji's arms to basically show him he's like, hey, you're fucking stupid. Neji would be thinking that he got lucky there and not to get his arms chopped off, and he realizes he can't use rotation against Naruto, so he'd try using the 64 palms, but Naruto would dodge out of the way of every single one of them, blocking a few as time went on. Neji realizes he's not going to be able to do shit, and in a basically last-ditch effort, he tries using rotation again. It obviously wouldn't do shit, and Naruto would basically one-tap him, or I guess two-tap him to the ground, because we can't not count the hit that Naruto dealt to him earlier. So, obviously, Neji would be easily defeated, and Naruto's his bloodlust is satiated a little bit. Like, not bloodlust as much as he doesn't he doesn't have that built-up freaking rage inside of him anymore that Neji basically created. So Naruto's going to be a little bit happier from now on, I guess you could say. So Sasuke would still end up fighting Gaara. However, he would not have the Chidori or literally anything like that because of the fact that he never actually trained with Kakashi. So he would still... Kakashi? Did I say Kakashi or did I say Kakashi? I don't know. Kakashi, anyway. So he doesn't actually have the Chidori, and he would be a little bit weaker than he would be in the original. He'd probably still have his... whatever, like the freaking curse mark sealed away, so he has at least some sort of control over it. But he does not have the, basically, ability to actually go up against Gaara, and Gaara would take out Sasuke before he actually got to his partially transformed state. However, when Naruto would enter the ring, he saw how powerful Gaara is, and he does not want to hold back against him. Infusing his sword with the antimatter, he would charge up to Gaara in an instant, and use literal full force, and use the back of his sword to deal a massive blow to the head of Gaara, sending him flying back into a wall, knocking him out almost immediately. However, this would obviously awaken Shukaku due to Gaara actually being asleep at this point. So Shukaku would come out, he'd be like, sad, dude, and Naruto would be like, what? He'd be like, how am I supposed to, like, that's a tailed beast, what am I supposed to do against something like that? Like, damn, that thing's kind of big, isn't it? It's like, it's really up there. Naruto would be kind of concerned by this, but he tries to go on, tries to continue fighting anyway. So, he would end up doing that. He'd end up continuing on with his fight, and eventually he would lead them to being out of the village. With Naruto, he's pretty tired at this point because, he obviously would be. And he realizes that he's going to have to use his antimatter. Not for the knockout type. He's going to have to try using it to blow up this giant beast thing. So he jumps up and creates an orb of chakra around his hand before allowing the antimatter to seep into it, making a hole inside of the antimatter, a pretty decent sized one, like not like a pinhole anymore at this point. It's a pretty decent sized opening. It would basically make this massive explosion that, like, Gaara's dead. Gaara's dead. Like, let's be honest here. Gaara's dead. And Naruto is seen throughout the village as somewhat of a hero for taking out the tailed beast, and Gaara just doesn't exist anymore. The antimatter explosion literally... It would completely destroy him because Gaara was made of matter and Naruto used antimatter against him. It would completely destroy Gaara along with Shukaku, so they'd literally be gone. Shukaku could probably come back since he's literally chakra, and chakra, like I said, is not actually matter, at least that's what I said before. So he'd be able to come back, but Gaara's fucking dead. Gaara's just gone at this point, so he's fucked. So with Gaara actually being yeah, like, literally gone. Like, they cannot find his body, nothing like that. They don't know where he went. they're kind of concerned, but they are like, okay, whatever. They actually do end up giving Naruto the Chunin rank, along with, you know, the normal people that they'd give it to, being Shikamaru and Neji and everybody like that. They'd end up giving the Chunin rank to a few different people, one of them obviously being Naruto, like I just said. However, that's where I'm going to leave this part off, so I'll see you guys in the next part. Peace out, bye.